before we go to our free cash flow calculation, there's one last piece that we need to take care of. And that is, we need to think about how much working capital this company needs. We touched on that when we discussed free cash flow calculations, and now I want you to see it in practice. So the only element of working capital that this company has is inventory. And our assumption spreadsheet tells us that each store needs $50,000 of inventory. So how should you think about inventory? Think about a large retail store that has to open, a large big box store. Now, when a big box store opens, it had to be built. That's the capital expenditure that we discussed at length before. But it also has to be filled with stuff inside that will then be sold. That stuff that you're going to fill it with is your inventory. If you think about what is on those shelves and what is in the warehouse behind the store, all of that is inventory that the company needs to accumulate. So the assumption that we have in this case is that each store needs $50,000 of inventory. That's always the same. And now the important thing to try to figure out here is it only for the existing stores that I need inventory, or is it for the total stores? Now, we could think of it in two different ways. The way I want to adopt here is I will assume that if I'm building out a store, I want to have it ready to go when it's done. And it's going to be ready to go on December 31st of the year in which it is being built. That means it has to have all of the inventory in it in order to operate. That means that I want to make the $50,000, I want to include those $50,000 for any store that is ready at the end of the year. Think of it as buying all of that inventory to put into the store during the month of December. It has to be ready to go. And so I will multiply the $50,000 of inventory by the total number of stores rather than by the new stores. So this company has $1 million of inventory across all of its 20 stores. And then notice that in 2019, it has more inventory. Why does it have more inventory? Because it built out 5 new stores. And so by the end of the year, it has 25. They're not yet selling anything, but I've already included the amount of inventory that the company needs in those new stores that I'm building out. That number is going to keep increasing until I hit $2 million of inventory by the end of 2023. Now, if you remember, in our free cash flow calculation, I don't want to include the total amount of inventory, but rather, I only want to include the investments that I make into inventory in each year. Now, in 2018, I didn't build any new stores, and so I don't really have any change in inventory. So how do I get the change in inventory in 2019? Well, it's the amount that I have this year minus the amount of inventory that I had last year, which gives me $250,000 of inventory. Where does that number come from? It really comes from the new stores. Now, if I were increasing the amount of inventory in existing stores, I would have to include that investment as well. But in this case, this is changing only because I'm building new stores. The company as a whole will have more inventory, and that is reflected in this change over here. And so now, try to think about which years are going to have a change and which are not. Well, the answer is the years where I'm building out stores will have a positive change in inventory. I'm investing more, and a significant amount in this case, $250,000 in 2019 through 2022. Then by 2023, I'm not growing anymore. There is no more investment in inventory. And you see that in the assumptions, I have 5 new stores over 4 years, then none. Well, then there's no increase in inventory in that year. A similar logic applies now that we've finished the net working capital calculation. A very similar logic applies to capital expenditures. Capital expenditures is the amount that I'm investing in order to build out stores. How many did I build out in 2018? Well, I built none. And I'm still, though, going to multiply that by the amount that I'm spending in each store. So in 2018, I have no capital expenditures because I'm not building out new stores. If you copy this to the right, or if you drag your formula to the right, you will see that in 2019, I am building out 5 new stores. That's $200,000 times 5. That gives you the $1 million in capital expenditures. Another $1 million in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And then again, I'm not building anything in 2023. I have no capital expenditures. So you see how this line is reflecting your investments in fixed assets, the amount that you're spending in order to build out stores. The line below in the change in net working capital calculation has the change in the investment, but this is rather in inventory. It's not in walls and lighting and electrical. It is in the products that you have to have inside your store in order to start operating.